Welcome to the Charts chat for August 21st, 2018. Go ahead and into chat here. I'll dump the discussion. We'll probably have a quick one today. If we can get back to the discussion minutes, here we go. Google Doc for it. All right. I threw two things up here. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they wanted to discuss. Go ahead and add it to the doc. The first thing we have is the DCO and automation. So a reminder, our automation uses tags on the repo in order to do authorization under the CLA. We have a tag there. So there's kind of a two-step process that needs to occur. We need to update the CLA tag to also, when the CLA bot applied it, to also have a tag that says like you're authorized to contribute. And then when we have the DCO bot check for the commits, we also need to apply the tag you're authorized to contribute to deal with this overlap, because we literally have hundreds of PRs under the CLA, right? And we need to handle this overlap well. So I'm in the process of writing a bot. It's using Brigade that will go ahead and add tags to the repo if it passes the DCO. I'm in the process of writing that automation. What I'd like to do later this week is actually make the switch to DCO, because this is literally the only thing holding it up. The blog post to go out for Helm is done. It's just that. Do we see any issues in that? It would be a two-step process. I'd run a one-time job to add a tag to anything that had CLA pass that also said, hey, you have DC, you're okay to contribute. Just some generic name like that. And then we'll add the pro bot for the DCO to the org. And then I'll add this bot that adds the tag if the CLA works as well. And we'll go ahead and update the Kubernetes bot configuration so that it does it based on the other tag instead. And then everything will continue to be good. Does that sound like a sane plan? I want to execute it maybe on Thursday after the Helm meeting, just to make sure that everybody else is ready to switch to the DCO. But this was the last thing that I was aware of.
Is there going to be a window of time in which if someone does open a PR, it will fail for that reason?
As soon as we switch to the DCO, anything that's new that somebody contributes will be required to be under the DCO. That's as simple as it is. We've already voted to do it. The move is just held up, quite frankly, by charts and our automation. We do have a blog post written up, ready to go out, that has a FAQ on it to tell people exactly what to do and how to do it, including if you have to amend old commits, because if a PR has to be amended and it's a new contribution, then it has to be under the DCO. And so if they're amending commits, just what does that mean? And so we do have something that tells them how to do that. Even if it's just the previous commit, or if it's older ones, it gets more complicated, but there's tutorials on this already. We talk about all of this, from the legal changes to all. There's this nice blog post that's been written up with a FAQ on it.
Cool.
So that's coming. Does anybody see any issues with us pulling the trigger this week? I just want to get it out of the way. Rip the Band-Aid off. All right. And then the next thing was just a check-in on the distributed search. The repo is created. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's called Hub. It is owned by the charts maintainers. There is no code in it yet, but there's issues on it. I am in the process of tracking down people to host the Kubernetes cluster. We need to do it. I've got a couple of takers. I'm going to chase it down and close it out this week, because I would love to run the automation there that does all of our checking, the tag thing, all of it, which, by the way, I have been writing in Brigade, because on the Helm project, we have a whole bunch of people with Brigade experience, which makes it easier to hand it off to somebody or to get others to troubleshoot it. Anybody else used Brigade before?
No,
I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I think everybody used.
Okay.
I have not yet, honestly, but I'm looking forward to.
It's really neat, and I'm enjoying working with it so far. It took a little bit to get things up and going, but I've filed a bunch of issues against their documentation to fix it, and so that's it. Yeah, Scott.
Learn more JavaScript.
What was that?
I said I need to learn more JavaScript before I can use Brigade.
And it uses newer JavaScript stuff. Some of the things like the async functions and some of that stuff, I just haven't really had much experience using from all the time I've done JavaScript. So there's some neat things you can do now.
It was an interesting choice. I understand the reasoning. You know, to appeal to a wider developer pool, but it wouldn't be my first choice personally. But I'm looking forward to trying it.
Yeah, it's just that JavaScript is the most widely used language, and that's the straight up reason for it. There's
very reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, that was the reason behind it, and because there's also design. What was that?
I said they could have picked something weird like Lua.
You know why Lua was picked for Helm 3? Anybody know?
No, why?
Why?
Because we have to do cross-platform builds of Helm, right? We have to ship Helm on Windows, Linux, Macs. People also use it in environments like BSD and other environments, right? So whatever engine that we ship has to be able to run in all of those environments. We have to be able to build binaries and ship it, right? Now, find an embedded language that you can ship across all of those things and easily bundle up that doesn't require you to have large teams of people working full-time to do it. Well, JavaScript is not one of those, right? You might get it working for something like V8 on Linux, great. Now try to also get it working on Windows and Mac. And if people want to use this on BSD, they need to be able to use, just walk away from JavaScript if you're going to do that, right? And then try and add in layered controls for imports, right? So you can do security sandboxing and things. I like JavaScript sandboxing model, but some of these things with the libraries and the access, just like it gets complicated. And so Lua is something that we're capable of actually implementing in a reasonable period of time with a reasonable size team across all of these environments and languages, and not having, few hundred meg binaries, right? Or bigger for Helm.
Mark,
I'm not bagging on Lua, just to be clear, but
Matt, suggestion. Can we put why Lua was picked in that case? So explaining to big audience, because everybody's complaining about Lua's use, but if
people are complaining about it?
No, loads of guys complaining, why Lua? So we should
do a write-up. It is documented. The reason is documented, but it's buried in documentation somewhere.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I didn't see it properly. So maybe if you can put in more simple ways.
It is. We should probably talk more about it and pitch more and have some good write-ups on it. I would expect as Helm 3 gets closer, that's the time, because then that's something that'll hit a larger audience and it'll matter to them. But we should probably go ahead and message this well, because the burdens of doing this are hard. I can understand like V8, building this over at Google for Chrome totally makes sense in a cross-platform way, right? Because it drives advertising revenue and it drives their advertising business, right? Because something like Chrome, they monitor where people go on the internet and then they send that back to Google and then they use that to customize ad experiences, stuff like that, right? And so they've got a reason to pay a bunch of people to do it. But it's not always the easiest to go embed in binaries and some of these other things that you're going to like ship to people. So no, we're happy to. We can do that. Okay. So there's the hosting. Ednon is working on upstreaming some of the kubeapps changes to the distributed search in order to make syncing and some of that easier. Since we can guarantee it'll be running in a Kubernetes cluster, we're going to start doing syncing via jobs and some of those things. And so that's kind of where we're at, is finding that environment and getting some of this going and working out some of the process stuff. I know Reinhard had the task for figuring out some of the process stuff. If he doesn't jump on that because he's got other things going on right now, then somebody else will probably step in to figure out some of those things, because process stuff is kind of the longer lead. Actually spinning up Chart Museum and hosting that publicly is pretty easy. It's the infrastructure and process things that are our longer lead things.
Can CNCF provide some cluster? No.
The CNCF can, and we've talked about it, their default hosting mechanism is bare metal, which means we have to take bare metal, lay down Kubernetes and operate it on top of bare metal, and then we can operate things inside of there. And for a lot of the CNCF projects, this is great. And from what I understand, this has been donated to them, which is why we have it in such an easy capacity. They could go and pay for clusters somewhere else, but they would be paying for a service such as GKE or AKS or EKS. For us to do, and we'd have to go through that route. And so rather than them paying, we are looking to see if somebody wanted to donate hosting the clusters and giving us full control of those kinds of things, like basically giving us an account where we can run wild in the same way we've had for some of the testing and other charts infrastructure stuff. We're looking to see whether somebody wanted to do that. And so we're giving folks a little bit of opportunity to talk and figure that out. Rather than, basically go for a free account from a service provider rather than having the CNCF pay for it. We're just checking that route out as we figure out other things because we do have a little bit of time.
Sorry, Matt, what kind of cluster are you looking for?
We need Kubernetes clusters where the charts...
What spec? GKE, if you check GKE, what kind of spec would be?
What we'd be looking for is something where we can have the control of the cluster. And so the charts maintainers get full control of everything within the account because...
Probably control of the project, right? So that we can spin up clusters as needed, right?
If it's GKE, the project, if it's AKS, it's a different name within Azure Cloud. But basically that concept of that space, we would like to have a space where we can go in and do what we need to without having a lot of outside controls on our ability to do things. We have, for example, the way where charts are hosted today for the public chart repo, it is an account managed through Google, and we are not owners on it, which means things like I recently learned the incubator metrics were not being kept. So all the charts things that I put out are just for stable. I don't have the ability to even turn on gathering metrics for that. And I've had to go poke folks, but I haven't gotten a response back. In fact, I need to go chase that down again because it's probably fallen out of their inbox. And it just got passed without being done because we don't have that. We're not able to do a lot. And so really this time around, if we can't have full control, we'll probably ask for the CNCF to host it because we're talking small clusters here, probably 3 nodes just for HA. We could probably run in 1 node. But we'll go with the 3-node cluster to do our testing and our automation and run Chart Museum. And then
personally, I would love to see, just maybe good to have multiple clusters, but I realize that maybe a brainstorm in this could be pushed off for some other meeting. But just for ensuring that our tests work, it would be great to say.
But that's running tests. We don't have to run tests now. We don't have to run tests in the distributed search, right?
Actually, you're right. Not for the search. That's correct. That's the other project that I'm thinking of. Never mind.
Yeah. We don't have to. Now, we might grab some of their things and then run search on it. And distributed might be nice for some of the global reach, just to not have the server just be in the US, just for faster round trips. And we might look at things like CDNing through object storage, JavaScript assets, and things like that in order to speed it up around the globe. Because just operating something out of a US data center doesn't really help in Europe or Africa or China or some of these other places. Which is actually an interesting thing when we think about GKE. I don't know if folks are aware, but Google's infrastructure is not available in some countries due to the way they interpret US embargo laws.
Yeah, like China, I think.
China does block some things. Yeah, the reason the CNCF uses list.cncf.io and not Google Groups is because Google Groups web interface is not available in China, for example.
Right.
And so they cannot they can email us, but they can't easily sign up for and manage the lists they are on. Email works to that. And so there are some limitations that we need to look at as well.
Matt, can you send me a spec what kind of, or maybe amount of money you want to spend per month?
I don't actually, I'm not sure what that is.
Spec, so I can try something to pull on JFrog side.
Okay.
I
don't. Okay.
We're happy to help,
Okay.
By the way, just for future ref, Matt, I was talking about the that charts releaser idea, which is, I realize, is separate from the hub. I would love, though, if we could have if we could extend some of the conversation about clustering to that.
Yeah, and then the question is how many resources and what would that need? And then we can scale up at that point,
Yeah.
dependent on it. Does it need to be sandboxed from other things? Is another namespace safe enough and an RBAC controlled cluster? You know, what kind of requirements do we need? And how much is it going to do? Because a lot of this, if we could do something really simple, like tie it into GitHub releases, push stuff in there, do we need to run the tests? To what level of testing do we need to run? There's a lot of what ifs in here. But figure that out later. Yeah, that's why I'm not focusing on that, because in my mind, I keep thinking of that as a next term thing, not the short term to remove pressure on the charts repo.
It is the next term. It is a next step.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But yeah, I would hope that isn't a problem for this to host either as part of that effort to slowly get there.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and Remus, I can send you what I think it's going to take. And just poking it, it'll probably be just actually a fairly small cluster up front is what we need, and then it'll end up growing from there. I haven't figured out the cost.
Running on GKE, you can have a couple extra notebooks which are preemptible VMs for some testing, which are in whatever 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They are much cheaper, basically mixing up notebooks.
Yeah, but we're not looking for testing VMs. We're actually looking for Kubernetes that is long running to host the service that people will be able to hit at any time in the day.
Yeah, no. But I mean, if you need something else, you need something testing, you can use preemptible VMs. Just usually what.
Yeah, Remus, that's a good point. What I mentioned, and I am going to table what I mentioned until a later conversation, because I think Matt's right. We need to focus on the hub for now, but I am going to be thinking about that. I do like preemptible VMs for things like that.
I use a lot
for the
testing. It's awesome, and it's 25% only, but it's not one running part. It's totally awesome. Even for static stuff, we can run it.
You probably don't want to run it for the hub, though, right? I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to kind of see what its usage model is, what kind of resources it's using at what time of the day, where are the peaks, things like that, because we wouldn't want anything being preempted while it's in a primary part of the day and people are attempting to use it.
Yeah, but look, if you had stateless app totally, you can have a couple of different notebooks, which is that it gets created different time. It works. I tested before. And you have multiple replicas running across the notebooks. That's it. You won't see anything. But no, just cheap thing. But for testing is awesome. But around running things, yes, you need proper stuff.
Yeah. So, okay. That's kind of where we're at with the distributed search is we got to nail down some of the governance things and get those guidelines in place and then just get the host and then we can start doing it. But first I'm interested in the chart stuff. And as soon as I get the charts stuff moved to the DCO, then I'm going to be really interested in all of this. And you're going to probably see me ramp up a bunch of time on this because I just want to get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just the general thinking, if I remember correctly about that hub repo, is that pull requests will be made to add new projects to that central hub, right?
Yeah.
Basically configs for Monocular, configs for the Monocular instance.
Exactly. Configs for the Monocular instance, and hopefully upon change, it will reload the configuration in Monocular. That's the idea. And Monocular is also going to have some other things where syncing can happen via jobs, because Monocular as a single app can do syncing by itself. But if we can do syncing via jobs every so often, that removes pressure from the Monocular instances, so we can better manage those and take better advantage of Kubernetes.
That's great.
Cool.
So, anything else anybody wanted to talk about? Any questions?
Oh, yes, only I don't think we can really get into it as in depth as it, if, you know, sorry, as if Reinhard were here, but he had mentioned something in this group chat about asking people not to rebase, I'm assuming they're PRs. I'd like to talk with him, but also with any of you about that. I don't know why he thinks that or he feels that way. I'd like to know, but I don't know if any of you have other insight into that or.
So, Yeah, there's differing workflows. So on our stuff, right, we do a squash and merge flow. So if somebody does 30 commits to a PR, the squash and merge only, it squashes it into a single commit. And the difference is on GitHub, when you rebase, then GitHub doesn't know where your comments were about changes and what you wanted people to do, because you rebase the commit rather than it has to do with our commenting and feedback workflow on a PR, right? And so if a new commit comes in, then the old stuff knows, okay, we're going to show the outdated diff. Here's what you did. Here's what you didn't address on it, right?
Yeah.
But if you rebase, then those comments don't have to the same linking at the same point in time. And so everything becomes outdated, whether they addressed it or not, because a different commit came in and the old one is gone, right? And it has to do with the workflows of how we engage in providing feedback on PRs.
Yeah, my understanding, generally is that those comments disappear only if the lines connected to them disappear. But either way, they still show as outdated.
No. Yeah, but if, say you did 2 commits, right? So if you go look at the pull request to Helm for the governance, right? I put it up, Reinhard did some comments, I made a comment on it, and I addressed his comments, but my comment is still outstanding on it, right? And so because I did it as a second commit, because I addressed his comment areas are now outdated. They've been overcome. So all of his show outdated. Yeah. You can expand them and see the outdated, but mine doesn't, because that particular line hasn't been addressed. I'm asking for feedback from others, right?
Oh, I see what you mean.
But if it was a different commit,
I see what you mean,
rebased on top of it, then my stuff would show as outdated too, because you're losing that difference capability.
See, yeah, if you mean by rebasing, if you mean asking people to squash themselves.
No, that's not what he means. He said when we ask people, we ask them to rebase. So it takes their commits, right? Yeah. And it basically creates new ones. It pulls in master and it puts them on top of master. And so their commits now have changed. The commit SHA, all of that's changed. So the comments on the pull request are now seen as chained, because when you rebase, it takes master,
all
takes
the SHAs are different.
Puts them onto the SHAs are different. So those comments are now towards those old commits that are gone because the SHAs did, right? But if you merge it in, those commits and their SHAs are still there. And that means the comments are still associated with the right places in those, and therefore GitHub's interaction with them are different, right? And since we squash and merge anyway, it doesn't really matter.
There's no point
whether they're rebasing or merge. And that's what he's getting at. It has to do with the way comments work on commits, on GitHub PRs, versus in a squash versus a merge workflow when we ask people to bring in the updates from master.
Right. Okay. So. Yep. So we should probably update the wherever that's I'm looking up right now.
Sure. Did you want to do that?
Sure. That's why I'm asking. I wanted to try to be helpful there.
But does that workflow difference make sense, what I described?
It does make sense. I just, to be honest, I was not aware that was the case, which is kind of funny because, I review PRs, all day, every day, it seems like, and have for a long time. I thought that they just kind of got stale and not stale, but they were still present. Just that the commits show up afterwards.
No, when you rebase, it takes the old commits, removes them, and injects new commits with new SHAs. And
so all different SHAs,
yeah. And that's where the problem comes in. Yeah, actually, Reinhard has more experience. I actually gave him props today. If you go look at dev stats, you'll see that Reinhard is smoking everybody else on contributions to the org.
Oh yeah.
That's primarily due to his reviews.
Mm-hmm.
So this reviewing thing hits him far more than anybody else.
He's a beast. Yeah.
Ridiculous. And so he understands the pain point of this far better than anybody else. Like, which comments did people actually address and which ones did they avoid and what I told them? Because when they rebase, it just shows all outdated. I can't tell the difference, right?
I see what you mean. And in fact, that's what I thought. Yeah. They're still present. They're just quote unquote outdated. Yeah, right? You can still expand them, but they're not in context. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to look for a place in our docs. I guess the contributing doc?
That could be, probably.
Okay, thanks. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, and even when we give comments, a lot of times we'll say, can you rebase this off master? And we should probably just say, can you merge the changes in off master? And that's something we can do when we're reviewing.
Okay.
And it's only because we squash and merge, it doesn't really matter. So, all right. Anything else? Small crowd this week. Not a lot to talk about. I think a number of folks are busy and off on other things. I think actually Adnan's out. I'm not sure where other folks are. Small crowd this week. It's good. Got through it. So I guess everyone can have 28 minutes back. That's just something else we want to chat about.
I don't think so.
Oh, one last thing I should probably point out. We just, I see there's a bunch more, there's more comments now, but Helm, we are going towards our long-term governance. And there you can see, that's the pull request for our long-term governance that we're looking at on Helm. So if anybody wants to read over it, when Helm became a CNCF project, we needed to have provisional governance in place right away and figure out what our governance structure would look like. And so this is the proposal that we've crafted. And that's it. Folks, I guess have a wonderful week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.